Hey folks, this is Jesse Cope, back with another episode of the American Soul Podcast. Hope y'all are doing well, wherever y'all are, and whatever it is that y'all are up to in this part of your day. Thank y'all, as always, for giving me a few minutes of your time. I realize that y'all have a number of other things that you could be doing with this 15 or 20 minutes each day. And so, thank you for spending a little bit of it with me. Hope y'all get something out of it. I assume that y'all do. You're continuing to return. And for those of y'all that continue to share the podcast with others, I appreciate that immensely. We continue to have some pretty good days. And come out here and, oh yes, Mr. Tom, we're going to lock the birds up for the evening. And then we're going to take one of our little strolls down the road, kind of our version of President Roosevelt's fireside chats. Although this almost turned into a real fireside chat tonight. And I can't get the lock closed on the gate because, there we go. We were in what most people would consider probably late spring in this part of the world yesterday, last couple days, and then we have dived right back down into the middle of winter for our neck of the woods. So, which is good because that'll probably keep me on track as far as time goes, because we have a little bit of a sleeting, freezing rain coming down on our walk. And I doubt seriously we're going to have any puppy dogs or children or wifey come out to join us. So I had a plan laid out for this podcast. Knew what I was going to do one on. We hadn't talked about this individual. I was going to do one on President Eisenhower. I haven't talked a lot about him, and opened the book to do some final notes before the podcast, and stumbled across something that absolutely changed the trajectory of the podcast for today, and probably the three-legged wolf is going to come out and walk with us a little bit, and probably, honestly, folks, the trajectory of the next couple podcasts. But we'll see how it goes. One of those little, my father always used to call them God winks. I think you notice something in your life where everything kind of hit just right with absolutely no input from you. And I know this seems like a simple thing, and it probably is, but I'm going to run with it nonetheless. We're going to talk about Jonathan Edwards today, and I'm going to read through one of the two excerpts from different sources that I found on him as I was getting ready for this podcast. Shockingly, stumbled across. Jonathan Edwards, 1703 to 1758, the third president of Princeton University, formerly called the College of New Jersey, was a great American religious leader whose preaching began the revival known as the Great Awakening. This great movement of faith swept the American colonies, helping to unite them prior to the Revolutionary War. This is a little excerpt prior to his actual comments, folks, in the American's God and Country Encyclopedia. He married Sarah Pierpont, if I said that right, in 1727, and together they committed to raise their 11 children in the respect of God. A little side note here, folks. I think we've gone quite a bit astray from God's command as Christians to be fruitful and multiply. Just kind of interesting here. Their success as parents was revealed in a study done in 1900, 150 years after their lives, give or take, showing that their descendants included 13 college presidents, 65 professors, 30 judges, 100 lawyers, a dean of a prestigious law school, 80 public office holders, nearly 100 missionaries, 3 mayors of large cities, 3 governors, 3 United States senators, 1 comptroller of the United States Treasury, and 1 vice president of the United States. probably need to do an entire podcast, folks, just on the importance of being a spouse first and a parent second. And we will at some point when we dive into one of those little side podcasts. And we could probably just stop right here and talk about it. Maybe we'll come back to it, and that'll be the point that we jump off. But we're going to keep going for tonight. Just realize that in our personal lives, folks, other than serving God, there is no greater strength that we can give to our nation other than strong marriages and strong families, really particularly leaving strong children behind. And I don't mean that in a physical sense. And, Adams talked about that. I think we've used that quote here. President Adams, toward the end of his life, minus John Quincy Adams that was president, his children really turned out to be, he and Abigail Adams, their children turned out to be kind of disasters in a lot of ways. I think there was an alcoholic that died young. The girl, I want to say, really kind of married poorly and was kind of a mess. One of the other kids, I think, came and lived at home for a while. And I need to go back into his biography by McCullough and get that. But he made the comment along the lines of, there is no calling so great that it can make up for doing a poor job as a parent. And he was talking about even the love of freedom and liberty to be fought for. And he did, folks, fought for it as much as you can argue, as much as anybody else in our country, save maybe Washington or Jefferson, or maybe just equally, just in a different way. And he acknowledged that at the end, that despite all of his successes, his failure as a parent, he had no excuse for it. And I think we've forgotten that lesson today. So we're going to read from his Narrative of Surprising Conversions by Jonathan Edwards. And then it was in the latter part of December that the Spirit of God began extraordinarily to work amongst us. There were very suddenly, one after another, 5 or 6 persons who were, to all appearance, savingly converted, and some of them wrought upon in a very remarkable manner. Particularly, I was surprised with the relation of a young woman who had been one of the greatest company keepers in the whole town. Company keeper, folks, you may be familiar with that term. I was not. I think it's an English term from the 15th century, maybe. As best I can tell, it means someone of very loose morals, prostitute likely. So at any rate, that's the definition there. When she came to me, I had never heard that she was become in any way serious, but by the conversation I had with her, it appeared to me that what she gave an account of was a glorious work of God's infinite power and sovereign grace, and that God had given her a new heart, truly broken and sanctified. God made it, I suppose, the greatest occasion of awakening to others of anything that ever came to pass in the town. I have had abundant opportunity to know the effect it had by my private conversation with many. The news of it seemed to be almost like a flash of lightning upon the hearts of young people all over the town, and upon many others. Presently, upon this, a great and earnest concern about the great things of religion and eternal world became universal in all parts of the town, and among persons of all degrees and all ages. The noise of the dry bones waxed louder and louder. That's a reference, folks, to the Valley of Dry Bones, I believe, in the Bible, where I forget the prophet, but the bones, the dead people wake up, and at least in my poor understanding, they realize how much they need God. Israel turns back to God one of many times. Those that were wont to be the vainest and loosest, and those that had been the most disposed to think and speak slightly of vital and experimental religion, were not generally subject to great awakenings. And the work of conversion was carried on in a most astonishing manner and increased more and more. Souls did, as it were, come by flocks to Jesus Christ. This work of God, as it was carried on, and the number of true saints multiplied, soon made a glorious alteration in the town, so that in the spring and summer following, anno 1735, the town seemed to be full of the presence of God. It never was so full of love, nor so full of joy. There were remarkable tokens of God's presence in almost every house. It was a time of joy in families on the account of salvations being brought upon them, parents rejoicing over their children as newborn, and husbands over their wives, and wives over their husbands. The goings of God were then seen in his sanctuary. God's day was a delight, and his tabernacles were amiable. Our public assemblies were then beautiful. The congregation was alive in God's service, everyone earnestly intent on the public worship, every hearer eager to drink the words of the minister as they came from his mouth. The assembly in general were from time to time in tears while the word was preached, some weeping with sorrow and distress, others with joy and love, others with pity and concern for their neighbors. There were many instances of persons that came from abroad on visits or on business, who partook of that shower of divine blessing that God rained down here and went home rejoicing, till at length the same work began to appear and prevail in several other towns in the country. In the month of March, the people of South Hadley began to be seized with a deep concern about the things of religion, which very soon became universal. About the same time, it began to break forth in the west part of Suffield, and it soon spread into all parts of the town. It next appeared in Sunderland. About the same time, it began to appear in a part of Deerfield, Hatfield, West Springfield, Longmeadow, Enfield, Westfield, Northfield, and in every place. God brought his saving blessings with him, and his word, attended with spirit, returned not void. Another reference there at the end, folks, is probably chock full of them, and I'm missing them, but that one was to a Bible verse that says that God's word never returns empty, more or less. Tell you what, it is not warm out here today. It's on this walk. I can see my own breath. The point of all this, folks, is when you read about Edwards, he is one of the prime, if not main, preachers responsible for the Great Awakening, which in turn many acknowledge to have really set the stage for the revolution because of the teachings of Christ and how much that drew people toward freedom and liberty and united them, the colonists, together as a whole. And I mean, we could talk about this a long time, folks, and we probably will come back to him again, at least one more recently, I mean, within the short future. But of all things that we need in this country, we talk about it often on this podcast, we have got to have a people that follow Jesus Christ. That's the basis of our country. We show this over and over again, this modern idea of separation of church and state from the Supreme Court decisions in the middle of the 20th century was absolute fraud. It was immoral. It was a horrific decision that should never have been, regardless of if it was based on ignorance of the Supreme Court judges or malevolence, if they were purposely trying to destroy the country. Either way. And we let it happen. We let ourselves be led down this path. And a huge chunk of that is because we forgot stories like this. We don't teach it in school. We don't teach it in our homes. I was ignorant of a lot of these, am ignorant of a lot of these stories that I talk about in the podcast. And I'm certainly, folks, a sinner just like everybody else. I don't mean to pretend that I'm not. But the idea that all people are equally good or bad, or maybe even more to the point, that we're always equally good and bad against ourselves, comparing just to ourselves, it's a blatant lie. There's always the ability to be better. And at this time in our country's history, this great awakening, that's what people realized. They wanted to be better, as it said here, as Edward said in his comments, better parents, more importantly, better wives, better husbands. They rejoiced over the improvement the strengthening and faith of their wives, of their husbands, of their children who turned to Christ. And it just spread like wildfire. And we've got to have that, folks. We've lost that because we quit teaching that. We rejected God out of our institutions, out of our education of our youth, out of our homes. We're not centered on the very foundation of our country anymore. It's like if you came along to a house built on pier and beams and you knocked all the pillars out from under it, and then you were shocked that the house was falling down and breaking apart, because that's exactly what we've done to our country. We've come in and we've knocked out all the pillars, which are all based on God and Jesus Christ. And now the country's falling apart. Our marriages are falling apart. Our families are falling apart. Our kids are a disaster. And we have no idea why. We we look like idiots, folks. For any rational observer from the outside, and we do have some enemies that are looking, going, man, this is awesome. This is great. They're just ripping themselves apart. We don't even have to do anything. We just kind of sit back and let them do the work, and then we'll come in and pick up the pieces. If you think, you hear so many people talking about our enemies today outside. If you think that Iran, the Muslim terrorists, that China aren't licking their chops right now watching us, particularly within the last couple decades, but really over the last 50, 60 years, you're deluding yourself. They're just biding their time, folks, because we're doing all the work for them. Lincoln's comment that we go back to so often, and I can't remember if it's a Lyceum address or not, but whatever it is, Lincoln's comment that we would never die, that not even the greatest Napoleon with all the money and all the arms and all the armies of the entire world save ours could not by force take a drink from the Ohio unless we allowed it. We will never fall from the outside, folks. It is the inside. It is the inside. The greatest threat to our country's existence is absolutely internal. It is citizens that are embracing, voting for, supporting, or indifferent to those evil values of the godless left. That is absolutely a cancer that is eating our country alive. And it's doing it because we have no idea who we are, whose we are, where we came from. We don't know our own history anymore. It's like wiping your mind of your own parents and then trying to figure out who you are, your grandparents. You just wipe it away, and then you try and figure out who you are without that. You can't do it. There is absolutely no way that we are going to turn this country around at the ballot box if we do not first turn back to God and Jesus Christ. And we may already be past that, folks. It may be too late. We may be headed for a fight. I think we are. But either way, no matter what the path is, if we don't turn back to God and Jesus Christ as a nation and put them back center of our institutions, of our public policies. We talked about this recently. My brain just went away on me. Dickinson. No. Noah Webster. We just read recently. If we do not have Christianity as the basis for our constitutions and our laws, Jesus Christ, the teachings of Christ, our republic's done. It's over. We've got to have one of these revivals that Edwards helped be a part of, helped lead in a lot of ways, helped start. And he didn't even lead, if you assume that the result of that was the revolution, he didn't even live long enough to see it, folks. But they trusted in God. All right. I think my hands are about to fall off, and I think I have bent y'all's ear long enough. Probably have. Yes, but not hard though. And I can see my breath in front of my face. So there is a warm fire inside, and I'm going to go sit by it. I hope that y'all have a wonderful rest of whatever is left of your day. I hope that so if you notice, folks, the background music changed a little bit. Maybe you can hear the fire crackling in the back. It is cold enough outside that my phone decided to turn off on me. And that's why it got a little crackly there at the end. I figured that would entertain y'all. So I am now sitting inside with my feet propped up by the fire and a kitty cat curled up on the couch. And we're going to call it a day, evening. God bless y'all. God bless your families. God bless America. And we will talk to y'all again real soon. Looking very much forward to it, folks. I enjoy it a great deal. Talk to you soon.